A lot of research in this area, and I'm going to just touch a few highlights here. What we know is that if you build effective networks, and I will give you 4 principles of effective networks in just a moment, we know that you're better able to make contributions in the workplace, you create more value, you are recognized for it, more likely to receive higher pay and promotions, you're creating more value. That one of the benefits is more engagement and energy in the workplace. And we've even found that it appears that people are luckier. They tend to be in the right place at the right time and get news before other people, learn about opportunities first if they have the right kind of network. So for the organization itself, there are lots of benefits. So when there's good social capital inside an organization, there's better problem solving, more innovation, more energy, more commitment to the organization. And there's less of the things that we don't desire, such as conflict or distrust or poor citizenship behavior. So the benefits of social capital accrue to individuals and to groups, teams, and organizations. And there's a case beyond the business case. I think it's important to note this as well. There's a lot of research that's been done in positive psychology and in medical fields that have shown that if you have good relationships and a good network of relationships, you're happier, more satisfied with your life. You enjoy better mental and physical health and even longer life. In fact, there was a 75-year-old study that was done where they tracked people over the entire course of their lives, and they found the single biggest predictor of a happy, long life was the quality of the relationships that we have. That is the biggest predictor of happiness, of satisfaction. So does learning about this make a difference? I know from experience that it does, but I thought I would share with you a quantitative study that was done by a colleague of mine, where he worked with a very large corporation, and he had executives undergo training in social capital, and he was able to get a lot of data, information about their performance, how likely they were to be promoted, if they were exceeding expectations, below expectations. And you don't need to look at all the bars here, but you'll see that the red bars tend to be taller than the white bars in the things that we care about. So on the far left, that those who underwent training in social capital were much more likely to be evaluated that they were greatly exceeding expectations, less likely to say they were just meeting expectations, more likely to be promoted, and more likely to be retained, that is, to stay with the firm. So I'm going to review with you 4 principles that summarize an enormous amount of research and experience about social capital in the world of business. And I summarize it with these these 4 phrases: location, quality over quantity, energize, and give and take. And at the end, with give and take, I'll share with you a glimpse of a new social capital platform that we've created. So first, location. So it's said that the most important principle in real estate is location, location, and location. Those are the 3 most important principles, and that's true too for networks. So here's the formal organizational chart, similar to the one that I showed you before. And here's a network diagram of the informal organization, how work actually takes place, who influences whom, and so forth. And I'll point out a few things. So if you look at Mitchell, he's far down in the formal organizational chart, but he is a key person in the informal network. He's the bridge that connects everyone. So he's in a very advantageous position there, although he doesn't have a lot of formal authority. If we look at Zaire, Zaire is at the bottom of the chain, and yet he's inside of a cluster, and he's directly connected to Mitchell. So that's a pretty good position as well. Although he has no formal authority, he has a lot of influence. And look at an entire group. The production department is off by itself in the informal network, connected only through Mitchell. And then 2 more here. You look at Sutherland, who is sort of at the bottom of the formal organizational chart, and he's off in the periphery of the informal network as well, not very influential. And if you want to look and see where the senior vice president is, the senior vice president is here in the formal organizational chart, but way over here. So that vice president is really dependent on the relationship with Mitchell to be influential. And we see this sort of thing all the time. So that's why we stress the importance of location in the informal network. So here's an anatomy of a social network. And we see lots of different patterns here. We see a cluster over here, a tight network. We see other ones here. We see bridges between those two and so forth. And I'll point out two advantageous positions in this network. One is right here. And the research shows is that if you're trying to accomplish work in a team, that if it's a closely connected team of positive relationships, where people connect well with one another, that there is more productivity, 20 to 30% more productivity. But if you're interested in innovation, innovation occurs in a different place. Innovation doesn't occur within a team, but rather it occurs in the connections between teams, because people who connect different teams and groups have more information, they have diverse information, they learn about an opportunity in one group that can be addressed in a second group, and so forth. So two places: to be a bridger if your goal is more innovation and creativity, to be a connector if it's to have high productivity. All right, so I'll talk now about the idea of quality over quantity. My business school students over the years have always tried to impress their classmates by saying they have the largest Facebook network or more contacts on LinkedIn than anyone else. And we know that most of those are not real and they're not very valuable. Facebook and LinkedIn have their uses, but not as good for social capital. So think about this idea. How many friends can you have? That is, I mean, true friends, that you have, a significant relationship with them. Well, this has been studied by a cognitive anthropologist who studied primates. So not just humans, but monkeys, all kinds of primates, and all kinds of mammals, and discovered that there's a relationship between the size of the brain and the size of social groups. That the larger the brain in a mammal, the larger the social group that can be maintained. And he extrapolated from these data to say that the real number of relationships that you can maintain for a human is 150. So it could be more, could be less, but the idea that it's the quality of those connections and not striving to connect with as many people as possible. Now, some of those other connections are useful. The weak ties, weak connections are useful, but in terms of how many friends that you can have, that would be the maximum. And because of the importance of relationships, those strong relationships, we teach about what we call high-quality connections. And so a high-quality connection occurs when there are two people who are, of course, aware of one another. They're interacting, usually face-to-face. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. It could be through Skype or other means. But in that interaction, they would report that they felt some energy, positive emotions, that they liked one another, and there was some mutuality, some give and take between those people. And, a high-quality connection doesn't necessarily mean a very long conversation with everyone all the time. It can be brief as long as there's presence and attention. Now, why do we focus on this? The reason we do is that there are ways to get better at building relationships, and we have documented the benefits. So there are benefits for individuals, such as more learning, more creativity, better resource exchange. There are benefits for teams that have high-quality connections within the teams, more learning, more creativity. And for organizations, there are a number of benefits as well. And this comes from a stream of research focusing on high-quality connections. So there are 4 ways in which a high-quality connection can be created, and I'll just review these with you. One of these is respectful engagement. That means you interact with another person that conveys a sense of value and worth. So, some people come to the workplace and they don't say hello to the custodian or to the secretary or people they encounter in the hallway. And other people will do that, right? That they will say hello and say something kind to somebody, even in passing. Well, that's conveying that you have a sense of that person as a human being, and that doesn't take more time, but you are respectfully engaging with that person, even if it's brief. So task enabling is another way a high-quality connection is created, and that means helping another person to be successful at what they're trying to do. It doesn't mean doing the work for them, but it could be finding information they need, a resource, could be pitching in, could be helping out by making a reference or a referral, but it's helping someone to be successful at what they're trying to do. So look at the bottom right here. So trusting other people. Of course, it's important to be trustworthy, but here we're focusing on the extent to which we trust the people that we work with. Letting people know that we believe that they'll meet expectations. So bosses who micromanage are conveying that they don't trust their people to do what they said they would do. And that tends to de-energize people. And finally, the fourth pathway or avenue is having fun, playfulness in the workplace. So it could be participating in a game or some fun activity. It may or may not have an instrumental outcome, a business outcome. It might just be for its own sake, but it helps to build that more positive culture. And what we have found in positive organizations is that all four of these are in abundance in the interactions that people have. So our fourth principle is the importance of energizing other people. And again, based on a lot of research that we have done. So we know that if you create high quality connections with someone, you have that type of interaction, that creates positive energy or positive emotions in the other person and with you. And our research shows that if you are a positive energizer, you energize other people, that you are among the highest performers. And the reason that is that if you energize other people, they're motivated to help you. They're motivated to share information with you. You attract the best talent to come and work with you. We call this the heliotropic effect. So we know about the phototropic effect, that plants follow the course of the sun. Heliotropic means that all living creatures are naturally drawn to light or to energy. So if you are energizing other people by having high-quality interactions with them that are genuine and authentic, they'll devote their time to your projects. They'll want to work with you. They'll share information and resources with you. And that's a reason why your performance would go up. But you also have the effect of raising the performance of other people and being influential in the organization. So here's a network of high-quality connections or energizing connections. And so this was an organization that was in some trouble, and they brought in 3 leaders, new leaders, to revitalize the organization, to re-energize the organization. And we came in and used some of our network mapping techniques and mapped the energy networks, the extent to which people energize one another. And that's indicated by the arrows. So somebody with a lot of incoming arrows is perceived to be very energizing. Someone who has few incoming arrows is not perceived to be very energizing. And we see there's a lot of energizing going on. There's a few people up in the right-hand corner who don't have any energizing connections. That happens from time to time. But when we submit the data to the computer to draw this diagram, it has no idea that these are people. We just submit numbers to the computer. And so I was curious as to where the 3 new leaders were located. And I colored them blue and I put a big red circle around them. And what you see is that the leaders were at the center of the organization, creating a lot of energy that was cascading throughout the network. So they were very energizing, and they were helping to turn around this organization. So it's also true that leaders can drain the energy of a group. So the previous network I showed you was of positive energy. This is a network of negative energy. And so every line here represents a de-energizing, low-quality connection. Now, thankfully, there's a bunch of people in the left corner there, left bottom corner, who don't have any de-energizing connections, but you can see a lot of people do, especially in the center of this diagram. So there's a lot of de-energizing. It's kind of the black hole that sucks energy out of the organization. And if we take the supervisors out of this network, those are all the people who are green. If you take the supervisors out of this de-energizing network, the only thing that's left is the bottom right. So what we found here in this analysis is that it was the boss, it was the supervisors who were draining energy from others in the organization. And there was very little de-energizing going on among the staff. Now, they knew they had a bad situation. They were horrified when they saw these diagrams. And to their credit, they took a number of steps to change the situation, to try to create more high-quality interactions, to apply a lot of the lessons of building social capital. And when we came back about 8 months later, the situation had improved a lot. So there are energizing networks and there are de-energizing networks. So I'm going to show you one or two more. So all these red lines are energizing connections among a group of about 60 executives in a large organization. And you can see there's a dense red-hot core, and there's some people on the periphery. We see one poor soul off here by himself who has no energizing connections. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to overlay in blue de-energizing connections. So red is energizing, blue is de-energizing. So we see that person that was off by himself over here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people pointing fingers at him saying that he's de-energizing. Number 9 over here has lots of arrows, de-energizing arrows going in and out, only one positive connection. And so sometimes when I've shown this diagram to executives, they say, well, we should just fire these 2 people. But what you'd like to know is you'd like to know more. Why is that person perceived to be de-energizing? Maybe something's going on in the personal life or who knows what. But you'd like to learn more before you made a drastic decision. But if I can draw your attention to the core of this diagram here, you see that there are blue lines even in the red-hot core. So one thing we know from this and other analyses is that everyone is involved in energizing and de-energizing, high-quality connections and low-quality connections. And what really matters is the ratio of those two. As long as you have at least 3 high-quality, energizing interactions for every 1 negative interaction, that's positive. That's positive for a group, and that's a good sign for an individual. So it's kind of a tipping point. So you should never try to always be energizing all the time. That's not humanly possible, not desirable. But on average, to be more of an energizer than a de-energizer. All right, so a couple more diagrams here. So here's a Facebook diagram. I know you all know about Facebook. And these are 353 students who were tagging one another in photos. So each red line represents one student tagging another student because they were in the same photo. And so here in this study, they noticed that some of these students were smiling, some were frowning, and some were kind of a mix. So they identified the smiling students and they colored them yellow. And they identified the unhappy, frowning students and colored them in blue. And green would be a mix of smiling, frowning, maybe multiple people in the diagram. And what they found is that, and there was a lot of analysis besides this diagram, is that the blue people tend to cluster together. So the unhappy people tended to be together, and the happy people tended to be together. And they got really curious and they said, well, why is it? Is it that, misery loves company? So unhappy people seek out other unhappy people and happy people look for other happy people. And they found out that that's actually not true. What is true, and they did this in other studies, is that emotions are contagious. So energy is contagious. And what happens is that energy is moving through the social network and we are infected by other people's energy. And that can actually make us happier or less happy. In fact, they came up with this idea of the rule of 3 degrees of separation, which says that our happiness, which would be happiness is defined as the frequent experience of positive emotions, is that, of course, our happiness is affected mostly by the people we interact with directly. But our happiness is also affected by those who we are indirectly connected to, 2 degrees of separation or even 3 degrees of separation. So when you create a high-quality interaction with somebody and create energy, it spreads beyond that person to that person's friends and that person's friends of friends. And when you create negative energy, that spreads throughout the organization as well. So I'll show you another illustration of this. This will take a little describing first. The background here is that this is a global automobile manufacturer. It's headquartered in the US, but it's a global company. And they were interested in the experience of their new hires. And that's what's arrayed along the horizontal dimension here. So these are new hires that have been in the company 3 months or less, 4 to 6 months, 7 or 9 months, and then all the way out to 2 years. And they did engagement surveys to figure out if these people were engaged, energized at work or not. And in particular, what kind of teams they were involved in. And we see a really strong pattern here. So when someone's hired, that's usually their highest level of engagement and energy. In fact, the maximum is up here, so there's not much room to go. And there's kind of a honeymoon period in the first several months. And if those people were in a highly engaged, energized team, they had very little drop in their energy over 2 years. Very little drop over the 2 years. But if someone was unfortunate enough to be put into a de-energizing team where there's low quality interactions and people are disengaged, that new hire's energy level drops and drops and drops and drops and drops over time. So they found here that the context matters a lot. So whether teams are energizing or de-energizing affects, in this case, how engaged people are and also their intentions to stay or to quit. So how to create energy, I want to give you 3 very quick points. One is through high-quality connections. That's something we've covered already. But we've also found is that if people have a positive vision of the future, no matter how tough the situation might be or how dire, if people have a positive vision of where they're headed, that's energizing. And if they're making progress towards that vision, towards meaningful goals, that is energizing as well. So last principle is give and take. So what we have found is that give and take means that you have to be generous and help other people, but also you have to ask for what you need. And we found that when people ask for what they need, there are clear benefits. So if you ask for what you need in the workplace, you do better on the job, you're more satisfied, you learn more, it's less stressful. If you ask for help, you could be more creative because you're getting more ideas and information. And there are many benefits of asking for help. But we found that that's a huge problem. So here's four points. So we found that in most workplaces, people are willing to help. They're willing to give. And the research shows that 90% of giving or helping in the workplace is in response to people asking for help, to responses for help. But that most of the time, people won't ask for what they need. They don't ask for what they need. So therefore, nothing happens. So we used to think it was all about just getting people to be generous. But if everyone's willing to be generous and no one is willing to receive, no one's willing to ask for anything, nothing happens. So what I advocate is that we all, as individuals and as teams and as companies, want to be in the red quadrant, that we are generous, we help other people, freely help other people, and we request. We ask for what we need when we need it. And the research shows that if you're in that red quadrant, that you're held in high esteem, you're well regarded because you're a generous person, but you're the most productive because you're getting the flow of resources, information, advice that you need. A trap is the blue cell. Those are people who are very generous, and so they're well regarded, but they're less productive because they don't ask for what they need and they don't get the information and resources that they require to be successful. So we have two ways that we actually create the red quadrant, and I'll share those with you briefly. There are many informal ways, but these are two formal ways. One is that, almost 18 years ago now, we invented something called the reciprocity ring. It's now been used by over 50,000 people all around the world, including Europe and Eastern Europe, and I believe in Bulgaria as well. But it's been used in Asia, the Middle East, South America. It's been used on Wall Street. It's been used in investment banking, law firms, goes on and on and on. A lot of places use it. And we can see these two people here are participating. The woman is, in the beginning of this, about to make a request to the whole group. And then the gentleman in the bottom right, this is towards the end of the process, because you can see all the network diagram that has been drawn, is responding to some of those requests. And when we've done this with so many people, we have tracked the benefits. People get an answer, they get a resource, they save money, they save time. And we have found that, that we can quantify those benefits. That the amount of money saved, the revenue generated is usually quite high, and people save a lot of time by asking for what they need. So I'm going to share with you a couple of requests that people have made. Sometimes people make a personal request, and this is just to give you the idea of the spirit of it. So we ran a reciprocity ring for a group of business executives, and one executive said, you know, I'm a naturalist at heart, and my heart's desire is to see a Bengal tiger in the wild. Now, I have to confess, when I heard this, I didn't think he was going to get any help. And this was made by a guy in Michigan, surrounded by those Great Lakes. There are no Bengal tigers there, right? So that person got more help than anyone else. Somebody knew somebody who led safaris. Somebody else knew somebody who owned a game preserve. And because of a response to that person's request, for this very unlikely request, he was in the right place at the right time to see a Bengal tiger in the wild. So the second one also seems very unlikely. So a person said, you know, I was adopted at birth, and I always wanted to know my biological parents' last name. It turned out that somebody else in the room, in the group, figured it out, knew how to do it. They had taught themselves how to do it, and it was a combination of using DNA genealogy, so genetic testing and genealogy, family trees and stuff, and then using what's called in the States the Freedom of Information Act, so you could request information from the government and it has to respond to you. And that person put those two things together with the help of this person who coached them, and he discovered his biological parents' last name. So I'll give you just one or two more. So this is a business request. This was made in Toronto, Canada, and it was made by Avinash Raj, who is seated here in the right with the jean jacket on. And he created a company called Indus Origin. And this company's mission is to increase the wealth and recognition of artisans from India by introducing their products to the high-end market in North America, so Canada and the US. And his new line was coming out, and he had this request. He wanted some media and retail content. He wanted more publicity about his new products. And it turned out that somebody else in the room knew the product and innovation manager at the top retailer in Canada. was able to introduce that person, so tapped his network, introduced Avi to this person, met with them, and his products met all of the criteria: 100% handmade, traditional, environmentally safe, and so forth. So that's just a sample of the kinds of requests that people make. People have made, those 50,000 people have made over 50,000 requests. 99.9% of them have been helped in one way or another. And some very unlikely things have happened. So the last thing I'd like to do is to share with you this technology platform that we're developing. It's built on the principles of the reciprocity ring, but of course takes it much higher level so that global networks can use it. People don't have to be in the same place. The name of it is Givitas, which is a combination of giving plus civitas, and civitas is Latin for community. All right, so I'm going to have to get out of this, and let's give me a moment here. All right, my connection's a little slow here, but we'll get there. All right, so I had a tab saved for this. There's several groups that I'm participating in, so I'm going to show you one, a smaller one, so you can see it clearly. So I'll put in my password. My internet connection is quite slow here. So let's see. So this is the main screen. So you could do this on your phone, say your iPhone. I'm doing it on my desktop here. You have more real estate to work with. But the center of this is requests that people have made, which you can sort by the due date for the request. You can make a new request. Here's a relatively new one, and so I will show you what this looks like. So Esther, these are private networks, by the way, so that if you look at the member directory, you can know exactly who's in here. And it's not a public network, or it's not people who are not part of your group. So if I click on that, then, okay, so we see here, so Esther runs a consortium, and she says, on behalf of a member, does anyone have resources or processes they use to engage proactivity and goal setting with their employees? So, this was just posted today with a due date of next month, and that they already had an offer. So some person had gone through and made an offer, and this is Ryan here had clicked on the button "Make an Offer." When he saw the request, this is how I would make an offer. We're reviewing the offer here, and people. So I'm going to upvote that offer. All right. So Ryan will get a little note saying that his offer was upvoted. If I wanted to make an offer myself, I would click here, and then I could write my offer in. I could add a comment if I need a clarification. We could actually have a dialogue going back and forth. And just for the sake of time, I would just cancel that. If we go down here, so Scott has made, so you can see here got, oh, it's my mouse here just causing me a problem. Yes. So there we see a couple of offers that have been made. Let's see, what else can I show you? So in this group, which is a relatively small group, there have been 28 requests that were made, 83 offers. Everyone's received at least one offer of help. Let's see, you can say, you know, there's just 2 that are active right now. If sometimes you look and see, are there some that don't have offers yet? If you want to see who doesn't have help yet. This also interacts through your phone and your email, so that's other ways of finding out. You get notifications. Up here, there is your profile that you set up. You look at your individual request and activity on your request. Although if you got an offer on your request, you'd be notified with a quick notification on your phone. If somebody thanked you, for help that you offered, you get a quick little note of gratitude on your phone as well. So there's a lot of ways in which the system interacts with you. And this is my activity is a feed of my activity. And there's other things I could show you here, but last thing I'll show you is that there's a way of searching. So you can search, because this keeps what we call the whole memory of what everyone have asked for and where all the answers are. So this is a kind of a version 1.1 that we'll be developing rapidly this year, but it's in this is kind of where we are. And of course down here there's help, connections to TED Talks, and that sort of thing. All right, so I just sign out. And go back to here. Okay, so just in quick summary, the 4 principles to remember are location, 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 the importance of where you are in a network, a broker connecting different groups, or inside a tight connected network of a team, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And maybe you have a hybrid that's a combination of those two. Number 2, quality over quantity. It's about creating high quality connections. It's not about having as many connections as possible. Number 3 is the importance of energizing other people through high quality connections, for example. And when you do so, you are more productive as well. And then finally, the principle of reciprocity or give and take. So why don't I stop sharing my screen here, and we can, if there's let's see. We have time for any questions or comments?
Yeah, we will be addressing questions, but I think you can stop sharing.
Okay. How's that?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, so in behalf of all here in the audience, I'm thanking you for the interesting lecture. And yeah, you just addressed another things that I was not aware of regarding that I was actually reading the book. Anyone having questions right now? Yeah, Mirjana, you can come here if you want, because yeah, you can see the microphone.
Hello. And actually,
I can't. Yeah.
Bring it down. Yeah.
yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Yeah, you need to at least to speak louder.
Ivan, I hear you fine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay, then I'll try louder.
There you go.
Yeah, I was very interested in what you shared about how social capital can actually change a team within a company. And my question is, as an employer, what steps can you take to actually introduce social capital into your company?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't get all of that. Maybe just start with the first question again one more time.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, as an employer, what steps can you take?
Can't hear you, sorry.
Yeah, it's Mirjana is asking, as an employer, because she's like in the role of the employer. What steps can she take as an employer to introduce the value and the importance of social capital within her company?
Okay, what kind of company? How big?
It's a production company.
Sorry, a what?
Production company.
Okay, and how many employees?
40.
40, okay. Yeah, so there's a variety of ways that you can do it, and I think that when the employer wants to do it, that you can get a lot of traction with doing that. So whenever you want to create a change, there's 4 stages that people go through. One is just awareness. So teaching people through articles or books or TED Talks or whatever about what is social capital. So people are just aware of it. And then the second is that to get them interested in possibly doing something, and then try out some of the practices having to do with social capital. So there's a couple of short articles that I've written on Harvard Business Review that are available online. And so, Ivan, if afterwards, if you email me with a reminder, I can send you to the links, and then you can forward those. But there's a couple of ways to get started. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And there's a second question.
No, actually, that was the only one. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Someone else? Okay. Come here, or I need to. Yeah.
I think I speak louder enough. Do you hear me?
I do.
Okay, great. Hello, Professor Beyker. Thank you very much for everything that you shared with us. My name is Valentina, and my question is, because this is actually the 4th episode of Social Capital Boosters, and the first time when we talked about how you make connections, or what is your role as a connector, and how far do you go in really connecting people when you're doing so? And there was a question that came out that was really interesting, and I would like to know your opinion on it. And it's when you know that an employer is looking for an employee, and you know a person that you want to refer, but how do you exactly refer this person so that it doesn't really, if he doesn't do a good job, it doesn't reflect back to you?
All right.
So recommending the wrong person.
Right. Both are very good questions. So
not necessarily the wrong person every time, but
yeah, just to put it, I know what Valentina means. Yeah, we had a really the hot discussion about this, because one of the values of social capital that we put to everyone is that you can easily find a job through recommendations, because your network is a strong one. And people were like, oh, okay, I'm not willing to recommend someone, because after that I can damage my reputation because he's not doing the good job.
Yeah, no, that's true. You can damage your reputation if you recommend someone who's the wrong person for the job or a bad fit. So what I've seen is that people will the best practice is to only make connections where you believe that it's in the interests of both people. So you believe there's a good fit between the potential employee and the employer. And that if you don't think there's a good fit, that you don't make the connection. You don't make the referral, and you explain why.
Yeah.
I think that's the best practice. And the other was on making connections, and this might be just slightly off topic a bit, but what came to mind was what I've seen, that the people who are the best at this sort of thing is that they love to engage with conversations with people, but they focus not on themselves, what they're going to get out of it, but they actually will informally interview the other person to kind of figure out who they are, what they're working on, what their interests are, what they might need, and then if possible share a piece of information or an idea or a referral or a connection if you think that's appropriate. But the idea is to always be in an interaction, is thinking of the other person, learning about the other person, and seeing if there's a way you can help, even if it's very small.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I have one question about, I'm really impressed about and I wrote it in other articles about the power of informal networks, and as you already put it. It's really hard to invest time in evaluating your organizational informal structure. And that's always, I think you will agree with me, that challenge to convince the executives to, let's put experts like you going into the organization and really evaluating people, and which are actually the most valuable ones. And what are your recommendations in terms of easily evaluating, or like some techniques for executives and managers to find those people that are really valuable, those connectors, those people that are everyone trusts to them, and maybe not like firing them or promoting them, but really having a good relationship with them?
Yeah, so I think it's an important question. I think that doing some sort of a network survey is something you would not want to do as a first thing. That would be something you might do later on. And I think you could understand through conversations, informal conversations, who the key people are. I mean, so if a manager gets out of the office and is talking to people, participate in events, I think you can find people that way, in that informal way. And there are firms out there that will do surveys for you or analyze your email traffic, and I think that can be helpful. But I think doing it more informally can be just as effective.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And just tell us, like in a brief, what is actually the process when you if you go really deep in such analysis, like. You will be invited in a company, and then you do like interviews with all of the employees and like do some evaluation. And after that, those sociograms or those softwares are doing the math and showing who is actually the most connected person.
Yeah, so it's done two ways. It's done through surveys that people fill out, and these days those surveys are online. We used to, in the old days, we did them with paper, but essentially it's so the example before of the firm with 40 people, you would have a list of the 40 people by name, and you would ask, each person would complete the survey answering questions about the other 39. And from that, you would get each person's view of what the network is from their perspective, and then you can assemble all of those in the analytical programs and draw the kind of maps that I shared with you. The other way of doing it is through behavioral data, which is that sometimes people analyze email traffic. There are ways of doing that protect the confidentiality of the employees, but there's ways of doing that as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And a last question, if someone doesn't have any other questions, I'm just like thinking more towards development of society. We witness it here as we're like operating since more than 1 year and doing lots of events. We're doing those events and always promoting the value of investing in connections, in networks. And as you know, this is actually a long-term investment that doesn't pay off like really quickly. If you invest in human capital, like I will pay now money for doing a course or a workshop that will teach me something, or if you invest in some real estate or now it's modern bitcoins and you know that you will get money, that is something really straight and really understandable for people, and in Bulgaria especially. So what are your thoughts about how can we move forward and do our mission in order to bring more and more people to understand what's the value of consciously building the networks and connections and building social capital, and what is the importance of this conscious building of social capital for a society in one country?
Right. Well, that's a big question. I can give you a couple of thoughts on it. So there are political scientists who have written books about the importance of social capital for nations. Those are available. That's out there. I think in terms of the mission of what you're trying to accomplish, I think there'd be 2 points. One is to never give up, right? To be relentless, to take a long view and to keep doing it. Doing it within the resources that you have. So that might mean less, sometimes more at other times, but that if you've got that long-term commitment, there will be a long-term payoff. So that's one, is to not stop. And then the other is to use, in a creative way, all the forms of media that are available. So social media, even print, face-to-face activities, whatever it be, but to use as many avenues of connection and communication that you can, and continually getting the message out there. I think if you do those two things, that it would be successful.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think that was a great end point for our conversation. I really want to thank you, Wayne, for taking his time, even though it's like online. But I know that I think, and I really hope that you also enjoyed our connection with people from Bulgaria, and I hope someone from the audience took something for him, and he will like more and more invest in his social capital and his organization of social capital. I will be sending you an email with those short notes that we had, like the articles that you can send us to everyone, like through me. And I hope you will stay in touch, and even maybe in some future years, you can visit us with your family. We'll be very happy.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for those kind words, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to connect with all of you. You know, halfway around the world, or almost halfway around, and a visit to Bulgaria with my family at some point would be a wonderful experience. So, I wish you all the best, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, right? Yeah. So there is wine, we can speak, we can address questions to the other very top high-level expert of social capital, that's me. Yeah, I'm representing Mr. Baker after that. Yeah, just putting some music because it's always an awkward moment after.
I don't it's gonna be. I've got a bunch of real good reasons that I'm needing you to see. I can't be holding this feeling of all that you've forgotten is us. Time's up, you're gone today. Nothing could make you stay. You are finished with me for now. Finished with me for now. Taking it all away. Hard to think of an easy way to start. It's over. Give me what I've lost. Think of what I did today, how it's gonna be. I've got a bunch of real good reasons that you're never gonna see. You are consistently breaking me. All that I've forgotten is us. Us. Time's up, you're gone today. Nothing could make you stay. You are finished with me for now. Finished with me for now. Taking it all away.
As I take your hand and lead you to the dance floor, as the music dies, something in your eyes calls to mind the silver screen and all its sad goodbye. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm, but it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. I should have known better than to cheat a friend and waste the chance that I didn't give up. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you. Ignorance is kind. There's no comfort in the truth. Pain is the whole you'll find. I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm. Though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. I should have known better than to cheat a friend and waste the chance that I could give up. So I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you. Never without your love. Together.
don't know what to feel. I don't know what to do without you. Because I love you. I love you. Because I love you. My life is not the same.
you. Don't overthink things, baby. 'Cause I know that you do. You've been a stranger lately, and I know that's not you. Easy come, easy go. No need to fight about it. Easy come, easy go. No stress, I'm good without it. Easy come, easy go. Let's keep it fun and simple. Easy come, easy go. You know my loving is no sweat, it's no sweat. It's no sweat, it's no sweat. It's no sweat, it's no sweat. It's no sweat, it's no sweat.
Summer skies. There was a time when you